Do you want a weekly dose of energy and marketing tips to grow your business? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Lisa Peasick Show, a podcast that empowers entrepreneurs to heal and be heard, the permission to pivot, and the tools to design a life you love.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Lisa Peasick Show. We are diving into sales today. I'm so excited. And if you hear the word sales and you did not have the same response that I did, this is the podcast for you. We know that sales and serving and relationships are really the lifeblood of your business. And I want you to get this, especially because this podcast is coming out before the end of the year. I want you to really understand sales and how to do it in a way that feels great to you so that you are rocking and rolling, closing out the year great, and starting the next year, 2022, off with a bang. So I have an amazing guest with me here today, Nikki Rausch. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. I'm so excited to be here with you. And I feel how you feel about sales. Excited.
Heck yeah, because you are the sales expert, the sales maven who has the unique ability to transform the misunderstood process of selling. Oh my, is it misunderstood? Oh my, does everyone claim they have, do it this way and don't do it this way, and say this and don't say that, and be this way and don't be this way. And I think there's a lot of confusion that people forget kind of themselves in the process. And I think people worry so much about they don't want to say the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. They don't want to come across a certain way that they're not. And let me tell them about you. So 25 years experience selling to prestigious organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, NASA. Nikki shattered sales records and received top producer awards along the way. Entrepreneur, small business. They hire you to show them how to sell successfully and authentically. And you got 3 books, all on Amazon, a podcast, which I want to know more about, called The Sales Maven. And you're going to share the secrets of sales. And you already do that through keynote speeches, business changing workshops, and your robust Sales Maven society ignites game changing outcomes for clients. So we're going to dive into this authenticity, this game-changing sales stuff, and what a gift for my listeners. So let's dive in. Why did you choose sales, and how did you get into this kind of work?
Okay. Well, so I am a sales professional by trade, and I sold in the technology space for many, many years. And while I was doing technology sales, I was the traveling road warrior. I was the person who my airline used to send me a Christmas present every year. That's how much I was flying. Oh, wow. Yeah. So while I was doing that, I got really interested in how to build stronger relationships, how to be a better communicator. And I started studying neuro-linguistic programming. And if that's a new term to a listener, it's essentially the study of communication. And what it taught me was how to pay attention to habits and patterns in other people, how to pay attention to the language that they use, how to tailor my language to make it easy for people to be in conversation with me. So there was a lot of great things that happened, and it really helped me in the kind of sales position that I was in. And, fast forward many years, I kind of started to feel like, what else is possible for me in my life? Like, I'd been in my industry for 17 years at that point, and had studied NLP, and I just got really curious about it. So I ended up leaving my corporate job to go help build my NLP teacher's business. She had moved to the state that I was living in, and she wanted to build this training business. So I was like, well, let me do sales and marketing and event planning for you, and I'll assist you, and it'll be so great. And that was when I first started networking, and primarily networking with women. I came from a very male-dominated industry. I started networking with women, and I got to know these like amazing, cool women that were doing really like passionate, work in the world. They were so passionate about what they were doing, but a lot of them were really struggling to make money. And it was because they didn't understand sales conversations. They didn't know how to recognize a buying signal. They didn't know what to say when they got one. They just were so uncomfortable with the sales process. So I really just I was like, well, if you're open to it, let me offer you some tips or some suggestions. And my business really was born out of just wanting to be of service to these women to help them make money. And Sales Maven was born, and now here I am getting to have like the best gig in the whole world, working with still amazing, passionate entrepreneurs, helping people like get the first couple sales and helping people, go from that like almost to 6-figure mark to multi 6-figure mark.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I heard a bold quote from a mentor of mine once. His name was Richard Rossi, and he says, a life isn't changed until a sale is made, and a dollar isn't earned until a sale is made. And I was like, woo, because it really made me think about, the commitment on both parties,
Yes.
when that sale is made, the skin in the game and the lives that it changes, and just the way that, just the way that relationship unfolds when so sales are so important. Now, you mentioned the buying signal. Explain that. What is that?
Okay. So a buying signal is a verbal or a nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates that they're interested in some way. So an example of a buying signal is, let's say you're meeting somebody and they say, well, what do you do? And you tell them what you do, and they go, oh, I wonder if there's something that like, maybe that would work in my business. Well, I always hear this noise in my head. It's like ding, 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 buying signal. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, if you want to go look at my website, here it is. And I'm like, no, if somebody gives you a signal like that, your job is to act on it. And the way you act on it is by issuing an invitation. You would say to that person, well, what do you think about scheduling a time just to chat, to find out more about you and see if what I offer might be a good fit for you, if that's appropriate in that context. But by issuing that invitation, it's not like, hey, you go do something to the other person. It's like, no, let me take the action right now, act on the signal, see if you're interested. And if the person's like, no, I'd rather go look at your website, that's fine. Yeah. But your job is to make it as easy as possible for somebody to learn more if they're interested, and then give them an opportunity to do more with you. And that means by acting on a buying signal. So that was one example of a buying signal. And another like really missed one, which seems super obvious, is when somebody asks you about your pricing. Now, I find a lot of women want to say this, well, it depends. If somebody says, how much do you charge for, to work with you? And they go, well, it depends. Okay. First of all, it may depend. I'm not negating that. I'm not disputing that. And that is never the answer to the price question. The answer is that could range between this and this. You could say a range, and then you could say, is that something you'd like to learn more about? Or you could say, if they ask about your pricing and you say it ranges between this and this, and then you could say, is it something where it would make sense for us to have a conversation and see what would be the right fit for you? You ask the question. So you act on that signal. Just check it out and see what happens. Most of the time, it's an opportunity to earn somebody's business.
Yeah. And I love the language that you're using. Listeners, I hope you're picking up on this. But in the very beginning, when you were telling your story, you were saying, even getting into NLP, it was you were helping people get comfortable with you.
Yeah.
I loved that. And then you said you're issuing an invitation. And then you said, learn more about.
Yes.
So none of this was like, you have to make a decision now.
No.
Like there was, it's that pressury sales tactic kind of stuff, I really think is kind of on its way out. I love that. It sounds to me like there's no expectation when you go into these things. Like, I'm giving you an invitation. I want you to learn more, not like I'm desperate and I need your business, or I'm afraid to tell you it varies, AKA I'm just not sure. Like you said, maybe it does vary, but that's almost like a conversation or a conversational stopper when you say something like that, because the other person doesn't really know what to do with that. So I love that this is all framed around keeping the conversation flowing in a really comfortable kind of manner.
Yes. And that's exactly what I teach is the conversation of sales. And I teach a 5-step process to sales. I call it the selling staircase. I wrote a book about it. And the idea is that your job is to know what step am I on right now in this conversation with this prospect or potential client. And then what should I do to make it easy for them to move to the next step? It's not like, how do I drag them up, and give me money? It's, up the staircase. I don't mean that. It's just like, what should I do or say next? And when you start to understand like, oh, this is a process, there is an actual like structure to a conversation, then it allows you to be much more confident in the conversation without feeling like I'm just reading a script. Okay, you're supposed to say this, and then I'll say that, and then you're going to say this thing, and then I'm going to say that other thing. Well, that freaks people out because they're like, I mean, think about if you have to memorize a speech, like,
oh yeah,
if you're trying to memorize what that sales conversation is going to be, it feels super authentic. Or if you've ever listened to somebody read a speech and you're like, well, I'm so not engaged in the speaker. So instead, we want to have a real conversation with people. And that means I understand the structure. I have a good sense of where we're going to go next. So I'm going to take the lead here, but I'm going to make it really easy and conversational because the other person doesn't know what's next. You do because you're the expert, but they don't know what's next. And so your job is to guide and to make it easy for them to move from step to step to step. And this is why I teach. It's about issuing invitations and letting somebody say like, no, thank you. Or yeah, I'm in, let's go. What's next?
Yeah. So I think that's everyone's biggest fear is when they say, okay, what does it cost to work with you? And that's why people go, it varies, and they don't want to say, yes, it's $10,000 a month, or it's $5,000 a month, or it's $500 because they're afraid someone's going to go, oh, I can't afford that. Or, oh, like they feel like that's going to be the conversation stopper. And then that's going to be the death of everything. What do you do when someone goes, or what do you do about that? How do you handle that?
Well, first and foremost, be really careful about, and by the way, we all do this. I always say there's 2 big missteps that we make in life, but also in any kind of a sales conversation, is we project our limiting belief onto the other person. So we act as if we know how they're going to feel about the price. And then we act like we can hallucinate, like we're mind readers. I know exactly what they're going to think when I say this price. They're going to go, oh, I'm going to clutch my pearls and go, oh, that price is so expensive. I had no idea. Like we always assume this kind of stuff. And it's a huge disservice to the other person, because if you act ashamed of your price, or if you act like, I'm kind of afraid to say it because you might reject me, the other person's going to go, well, why would I pay that to somebody who's not even confident? Like I only want to hire the best of the best. Right. So it's really important when somebody asks you your price that you stand in your place of credibility and authority and say the price and then issue an invitation. And it's up to them to decide. It's kind of like, if you get a bunch of invites to, I know we're coming up on like the holiday season. If you get a bunch of invites to holiday parties, you get to pick and choose which ones you're going to attend, right? Yes. Nobody says to you like, how dare you reject my invitation? If you're like, oh, I have this other thing going on, but thanks for the invite. Yeah. You're not offended that they sent you an invitation. Like, how dare you invite me to your party? And so when you act like somebody's going to be that way when you give your price, how dare you invite me to your party? How dare you tell me your price? Then you go like, well, I probably don't want to go now. Like, I probably don't want to go to your party. This doesn't sound fun to me. So when you stand in this place of credibility and you say, it's $5,000 a month, is that something you'd be interested in doing? And they go, wow, I had no idea it was $5,000 a month. I need to process that a little bit. Well, you can ask a follow-up question, or you can schedule another time to chat with that person. I always say, make sure you schedule your next conversation before you leave the current conversation. So if somebody said to me like, wow, Nikki, I didn't realize that you charge $5,000 a month. Which now I'm like, maybe I should have a $5,000 a month option. But they say like, I didn't realize that that's what it was. I need some time to think about it. I would say, great. take some time. What do you think about us scheduling a time just to circle back so I can answer some questions, and then we'll talk about next steps for working together. Like, do you have your calendar available? I say this
Yeah.
all the time, by the way, because people who hear me on podcasts then get on calls with me and they're like, I know what you're doing, Nikki, because I heard you say that on a podcast. And I'm like, yes, because I walk my talk, and it works, because then they pull out their calendar. We get a time scheduled. We get on a call and I go, hey, did you think about us working together? What questions come to mind? And they're like, well, I think I'm just ready to go. Let's go then.
Yes.
I'm here for you.
Yes, I can second that and validate that. So our business is higher ticket because we're done for you, and we, have the whole team and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And the same, because we know we're high ticket, we never force anyone to make a decision on the spot. Sometimes we have 2 and 3 calls and people will say, oh my God, I can't believe you get on for free with people 2 and 3 times. And we're like, yes, when it's a 50K, 60K contract for a year, or it's a, whatever it is for 6 months, that's a big chunk of change for people.
Yeah.
And we stand in our credibility. We know that we're worth it. We know we do quality work, but I never want to push someone. Again, it's about not making them feel uncomfortable. We always say, we want to make sure you have all your questions answered. You feel totally comfortable. You have time to sleep on it. You have time to think about it. And you're right. 9 times out of 10, they come back and they're like, I'm ready now. Because you didn't force me or push me, you gave me the space to digest it, to truly think if I have any questions and come back. That always converts so much higher than if you're like, oh, we need to know by tomorrow, or, any of that kind of pushy. I really dislike when someone's selling to me and they're like, are all the decision makers on this call today? And I'm like, okay, if you're forcing me to make a decision, I'm just getting on to hear about the opportunity. If you're expecting me to make a decision right here now, we should just stop this right here now.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's interesting when you're talking about the buying signals, because that probably can work both ways, even when, I think there's a lot of advice. What's some of the worst advice, if I could ask you, that you've heard in your world of if an expert says do this and Nikki says no, don't do that? Is there any crazy things you've heard that you're just don't do that?
Yes. Well, okay. So we'll see if you agree with this one. I just actually got off. I did a training for a group this morning, and they were asking about one of the people in the group had just gone through a training program. Somebody was teaching them about sales, and they were like, hammer home the pain point. If somebody says, I can't afford this, then you say, that's so interesting because I know you spend X dollars a month on this other thing.
No.
Are you sure you can't afford me? And I was like, the hairs on my arm stood up, and I'm like, first of all, that's offensive.
Yeah.
And it's gross. And whoever's teaching you that kind of stuff, please abort. Abort. Nobody wants to be treated that way. If you have to shame people in to buying from you, you really are doing a disservice to people, and you're really putting your business at risk, because those people won't feel good about their investment with you. They won't talk nicely about you in the marketplace. They won't recommend or refer people to you. You'll have people in the marketplace that are like, hey, I worked with so-and-so, and I mean, yeah, they delivered on what they said, but it really wasn't a good experience for me. Who's going to then hire you? It's such a mistake. That one makes me actually angry.
Yeah. To second that, you're not serious about your business if you don't invest in me. That's the one that makes me jump off the seat. And I'm like, no, I'm serious about my business. You're just a dick. I wouldn't say that, right? But that's what I think in my head. I'm very serious, which is why I'm contemplating. I've now just decided that I don't like you. You could have the best solution for me, but it's not going to work because I just don't like the way you're approaching it, and the way, when you have an objection or you have questions, or you're like, I don't know. I've had that before with bigger purchases where I'm like, man, I just really got to consider if this is, I'm in a transition stage, and I really have to consider if this is truly, the right thing for me. I want to sit and I want to sleep on it. Oh, wow. You must not be serious about your business if you don't, invest and da, da, da. And I'm like, actually, it's quite the opposite. Right. And you're right. Just hammering in that pain point. I call, like, you hear that's like bro marketing, like, no offense.
Oh, totally, bro.
Offense to the men listening, but you're not a bro if you're listening to this podcast. But it's like that old school bro marketing. I had someone say when I was in a group when I was learning early on, it was a bro marketer that was teaching, and he was like, the pain point, you have to like punch him in the face. Like, he's like, it can't just be like a little pain. Like, you really got to like dig home. And I'm like watching people, diligently like taking notes. And I'm sitting there going, no, I don't want to do it that way. So I want to have an invitation. I want to give people space. I want to give people time. So I encourage you, listener, if you're listening and you've been told to sell that way, here's permission to say, no, you don't have to do it that way. And as you said, Nikki, if you care about the livelihood of your business and the long-term longevity and referrals, you have to give people the space. You cannot hammer home more pain points to them. That's never going to work in your favor. I agree. That one drives me crazy. What do you think about the deadline? Like the deadline when people are selling and they're like, you got to get in by this date. And sometimes what kind of irks me is I see people do false deadlines. So they'll say we're only letting 50 people in. And then you get in and there's 150 people in there, or you have to get in by this time or else. And then you see people extend. And I'm like a big person on integrity. Yeah. And if you say you do what you say you're going to do, how does integrity fall in the line of sales?
Well, I think it creates trust or mistrust if you're not standing in that place of integrity. Now, I will say around offers, I am a fan of creating some sense of urgency. I'm not a big fan of putting out an offer and saying like, well, I'm going to start promoting it 2 months in advance because nobody's going to pay attention to that like close date. So typically if I'm going to put an offer out, it's going to have a 5 to 7 day, offer around it. Now, a lot of times it's not that I close the offer and you can't get in. It's that something has changed. Some kind of a bonus goes away or some type of a price incentive goes away. That I think is, I think a lot of people like to buy on that. Like, oh, okay, I see there's an advantage to taking this action now. And not that you are punishing people for not, you're just giving people I actually like to frame things as you're going to get something, not have something taken away. Yes. So how can you show them that there's something positive by taking this action? They're going to get rewarded in some way. I don't actually like to make people feel punished. I don't do a lot of open, closed cart type stuff. And it just doesn't fit with my personality and the way that I sell. I always want people to feel like when I show up with Nikki, I'm going to get like 2 of my kind of main things is I'm kind and I'm credible. I walk my talk. I implement the things that I teach in my own business. I test the things that I teach all the time so that I have stories to tell later of like, here's why this doesn't work. Here's my, here's what I did and here's the experience and here's how the person responded and all of that stuff. So I think walking your talk is really important and having integrity, building trust. I know this is kind of like, we've all heard this a million times, is that people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Your job is to create safety with people. They should feel safe in a conversation with you. They shouldn't feel like if I decline, this person is going to hang up on me, or this person's going to shame me in some way for saying no. Like I look at a no as a bless and release. Like I just bless and release the person. I wish them well. I leave the door open. They're welcome to come back and work with me when they're ready. And until that time happens, I'm just so happy to have had any type of interaction with them. And I feel honored that they even considered working with me. And I don't chase clients. Like I have a really strict policy. I always say, like, if you chase, it's like if you say to a toddler right now, like, I'm going to chase you. They don't even know what the game is and they take off running. Yes. And if you act like you're just going to chase clients to the end of the earth. And I know a lot of people say this, like, you got to follow up 30 times, it's like, not if they haven't indicated any interest. Like then all you're doing is chasing. You're creating toddlers. They're going to run. And what are you doing? It's like such a time waste and energy waste.
Exhausting.
Go work with people who are ready, who are like, oh my gosh, Lisa, I've heard amazing things about you. I'm in. Like, let's make room in your life for more of those people.
Amen. I love that analogy of chasing toddlers too. That's such a good visual and so true. And I love that you talked about your brand emotions, that you're kind and credible. I always say your brand emotion is the way you make people feel. And that's what, right? Our marketing is what we say about ourselves. We talk about ourselves like we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Doesn't matter. Your brand emotions are the things that what other people say about you. You're kind, you're credible, you're integral, you make them feel safe. All of that you were talking about is gold. And I think when we can focus more on that versus, am I at the right part of the script? Am I saying the wrong thing? We forget about the humanness of sales. Like you're just one human being having a heart-centered conversation with another human being, right?
Yeah. And if I can't serve you, if I don't have something that's going to be valuable, that's going to make an impact in your life in some way, then I'm not going to try. My job is not to try to convince you. My job is to understand what's your problem, what's your need, what's your want, and do I have a potential solution for you? Yes. And are you open to hearing it? And frankly, I teach this as well, is that before I even put an offer in front of somebody, I have asked permission in some way to sell to them. I think we were talking about this before we hit record about like with your list. But I do this even in conversations. Like I don't ever, meet somebody and they are like I can see like they're clearly missing the boat when it comes to sales. I never say to somebody, you're clearly missing the boat when it comes to sales. I'm a sales coach and I help people on blah, blah, blah. No, I would say to somebody, I see some potential opportunity, and I'm just wondering, would you be open to me sharing a little bit of my thoughts around some things that I've noticed? And if they say, yeah, go ahead, I have a little runway here to say, I've noticed that you're so good at what you do and you're not picking up buying signals. Have you ever thought about picking up buying signals? And if they're like, tell me more about buying signals, Nikki, now I can talk a little bit more about them. And I can say, this is something that I teach. Is that something you'd be interested to hear about ways we might work together? I'm asking permission again. And they're going to say yes or no. And if they say, no, thank you, great. I'll move on with the conversation. We can talk about the weather or anything else. But if they say, yeah, tell me more about ways to work with you, Nikki, now I have permission to actually put an offer in front of them.
Yes, I do the same. I know my mentor taught me, when you're speaking on stage and that at the end you're going to make a sale, like it's a speech that's set up. Yeah. I do the same. I'll teach and teach and teach. And then I'll kind of tee it up where I'll say, and if you like, do I have permission to tell you later about another program or something that's going to deepen this point? Or, some of you have been asking how you can work with me. Do I have your permission later to tell you how to do that? And then everybody goes, you see everybody going like this, right? Or one guy that I work with literally makes people raise their hand. Like, he's like, do I have permission to tell you later? Like, you guys are getting so excited and I'm getting so excited. With your permission, I'd love to tell you later about da, 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 da. Do I have your permission? Raise your hand. And he's like, I don't go on until literally they walk out, or the person literally like raises their hand and says, yes, you can tell me about it later. And he says the same thing. Now that's like an extreme example, but I
love it though. I will say it feeds my soul.
I do drop that permission piece in there when I know that I'm going to make an offer at the end. Even on webinars or master classes or whatever we're calling them nowadays, right? If I know there's going to be an offer at the end, the same, I tell people early on. And when we get to the end, I'm going to have this incredible offer for you if you want to take the next step with me. Do I have permission to tell you that? Cool. Yes. Amazing. Let's keep going. I do think that permission is such a huge piece, because then you're not shocking anyone that you're making that invitation. Do I have permission to make an invitation at the end? I think that's so huge. That's like when we go into people's homes, we say, do I have permission to enter your home? Right? Like, even post-COVID, do I have permission to hug you? Are you a hugger? Like, we think about sales the same way. Like we respect boundaries and people's space in so many other things. Yet sometimes we can miss that in sales when it comes to that. And then lastly, just so anyone wondering, like, what's your kind of sales cycle? Or like, I think a lot of times people miss out on the sale because they're not making the offer. They're not making that invitation. How often do you sell, or what's kind of your cycle in your business?
Wow. I love this question. Well, I'm going to say first, I am always going for what I call like the trifecta. I'm always trying to put the right offer at the right time in front of the right person.
Yes.
But I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know when the right offer at the right time and the right person is. So that means that I make offers regularly in my business. I use my email list. 90% of my sales come right from people who have opted in, who have said, Nikki, I'm interested in something about you in some way. So they do get offers on a regular basis. And I test out a bunch of things. They might get a small offer, then a really big offer, then a like medium offer. And it's just this like constant thing. So realistically, I sell to my list at least once a month, but probably sometimes 2 or 3 times. And I get buyers every time I put an offer. And I don't worry about the person who says, no, thank you. Or the person who says, I'm sick of Nikki's offers. I hate her now. I'm going to unsubscribe from her list. I don't care about that. Not that I don't care about them as a people, but I don't care that they don't want to receive offers. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I wish them well. And as a matter of fact, I just had a client say to me, because I talk about this a lot, of like, sell to your list, put offers in front of your list. You have to sell on a regular basis. And if you're not selling, when I ask people like, when's the last time you made an offer to your list? And they say, what? Or they say, 6 months ago. Like, okay, now do people even know they're on your list?
Yeah.
And if you haven't given them an opportunity to buy from you, guess what? They haven't decided to buy. So I'm like, let people unsubscribe. Don't be worried about it. I just had this woman say to me, who is now a lifetime member of my Sales Maven Society, which is my membership program. She's like, I was one of those people. I got on your list. I was on it for a couple months, and then I thought, no, I don't think I need help with sales. So I unsubscribed. Then I heard you on a podcast. I got back on your list. And then now she's like a client. I work with her privately, and she's in my membership. So people, when they're ready, will come back as long as you treat them well.
Yes. I'm so glad. That's it. Ding, ding, ding. You're so right. As long as you treat them well, as long as you are respectful, as long as you are courteous, as long as you are giving them space and allowing them to answer questions and not being tied to the outcome. I love that you said, and I love that you said you didn't take it personal.
No.
Nothing about any of this is personal.
And if it is personal, it's also probably better that they get off my list.
Yeah.
Because I can be kind of sensitive. Like if people send me like, I hate you, you're the worst thing ever, I'd probably cry. So I'd rather they just unsubscribe and be like, I hate her from a distance. I don't need to tell her to her face.
And it opens up the space for the right people. I always say we have to get over the vanity metrics. Like, I would rather have a list of 100 people. I'd rather have a list of 50 people. If when I put out an offer, 40 of the 50 buy or 25 of the 50 buy, than having a list of 10,000 and having one person or nobody buy, or nobody at all. Like, it's not about the size. It's about the quality and the relationship and the trust that you said, the trust and the safety that's been built. Because you're a perfect example. When you build the safety and the trust and you do it right, they'll either come back or they'll buy, they'll refer, they'll come back, or they'll self-select and they're out. And those are all good things.
Yes. So I look at this as like, you've got to make space for the ideal client you got to attract obviously your ideal client, but you also need to repel.
Yeah.
You need to repel the people who are not a good fit, who just are going to just hang out for years on your list and be like, I'm just looking for all the freebie stuff that this person puts out. And there's lots of stuff that I put out into the market that's free. Like I have a podcast like you do. People can come and listen and get all kinds of tips and techniques and strategies from me. And that might be the only way we ever have an interaction. And I'm okay with that too. It's the people who are like, I'm not going to sit on Nikki's list. I'm not going to get sales offers from her. To do something with her. I'm just going to hang out on her, and listen to her podcast when I feel like it. Okay. I'm totally fine with that. I want to make room for the people who are like, I need some help with sales. Yes. I want to build my confidence. I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions in my discovery calls. Can you help me? Yes, I can. Here's how.
Yeah, absolutely. I never get upset when I make the offers and it's like, then I'll see unsubscribes happening.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like,
don't
that's a
even look
good
at those
thing
anymore.
because you would never, and it always makes me laugh because I'm like, my sales cycle is about the same. I sell once a month, maybe once every other month, depending on, or sometimes even more, sometimes twice a month. It really just depends on same thing. But every week they get a value email from me, no matter what.
Yes,
so every
same.
time somebody unsubscribes when I make a sale, I'm so not upset because I'm like, I know that I'm giving you value every single week, whether you choose to read it or not. So I'm not taking that personal. You've just now decided either A, I offended you because I sent a sales email, or B, you're just not interested. You will never do a transaction, or no, I shouldn't say never. At this time, it's not right for you to be picking up what I'm putting down. And that is okay. So we can't, I think that's a detriment that we take things so personal when people unsubscribe, or it might not at all be about you. It might just be about you're not what they're looking for at that moment. And that's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes a no is just a not yet. I feel like if I've gotten a bunch of buying signals from somebody, we've had a call, I definitely can help them based on what they have shared, and they've said no, my brain just says not yet. I haven't hit the right offer at the right time for them. And I'm willing to stay in it in some form or fashion. I'm not going to chase them, but if they want to hang out on my list at some point, I hope that I will put the right offer at the right time for them to say, I'm in. And this happens over and over and over again. I think as you've been in business for a while, and if you really are serious about using your list like an asset and treating it like an asset in your business and actively working that list, at some point, I've had people who have been on my list for 3 years before they ever bought anything. And they're like, this was just the right time. I was just ready. And I've had other people who come in and within 5 days have spent thousands of dollars, that just heard me on a podcast the other day, right? Like that happens too. I am just there and I'm going to be ready for when somebody is ready for me. It's like, what's the quote? Like the teacher appears when the student is ready or something.
Yes.
I'm just trying to be there when you're ready. And if you're never ready for me, I'm not offended by it. And I wish you the best of everything. And I'll happily put content out that will benefit you in some way if you need it. And if you don't, I'm okay with that.
And that I'm still going to do me. I'm still going to do me. I love that. I love that so much. So I've got your website, your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. I'm going to make sure that I drop all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being so generous with just the mindset and just the way you're approaching selling and making offers and making it. I just love that piece about the invitation and standing in your credibility and looking out for those buying signals, and really just helping people feel safe and trust you is really gold. That is gold. That is my hope for everyone, that they do that in their business and watch their sales and their relationships soar. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was a real pleasure.
Awesome. And listeners, thank you so much for being here too. Again, if you want to get to know more about Nikki and her Sales Maven Society and all her goods, I will make sure that I put that in the show notes. Go out, be more generous, stand in your power, make those invitations, put out great quality content, and stay true to you. That is the most important thing. We'll see you next time on The Lisa Pizik Show.
You've been listening to The Lisa Pizik Show. Let's connect more at www.lisapizik.com.